So these devices, they're usually connected to a serial port right off of the PBX, or some of the newer ones, well, most of them now, they have Ethernet ports, so you could hook it up to your phone network and you could just get into it that way. So they also provide redundancy, because if you did use TM and you had that DBA, if your Windows server went down, which is something you guys are probably familiar with, I know I am, you're not collecting data anymore, and that's not a good thing. So as long as you stayed on top of it, it was still doable. But these buffer boxes, they're very reliable, and that's a good way to do it. So when you go to UCM, it's kind of recommended that you do think about a buffer box like this if you do want to collect your records, because it's a good place to store them. They're pretty redundant, and they're very reliable. I've never really seen any of them go down, although it does happen, but I mean, just like with anything else, right? Just give me 1 second here. Just got to get hydrated. All right, so now that we have all these records collected, what do we do? What can we do to process and analyze them? So you have a lot of billing applications. Like I showed you before, the call detail record, it was kind of nicely spread out, so it is relatively easy to read if you know what you're looking for. But if you have a whole big file of it, it's kind of hard to say, well, what extension called at this time? That's why we have billing applications. So they're used to process, they're used to cost, they're used, they give you the ability to do reports, where you could say to yourself, there's tons of them out there, and pretty much anything you can think about. Customers ask me, I have a phone call that somebody called and harassed one of my employees. Can we check a number that called us, and as long as you have calling line ID, you could do a report on a range of dates and say, give me every extension that got called by this number. And then it'll give you a nice report on it. So that's kind of the things you're looking in a billing package when you go to Unified Communications Management. If anybody did have TM, you might be familiar with it. There's lots of different applications and lots of different reports. There's actually tons of them, but from my experience, like 99% of the time, most people use an extension detail report, which would be a report that just gives you a detailed analysis for a certain range or for all the data you have of all the calls that person made or received. And you could just kind of massage it if you want to. So again, UCM does not provide you with a billing application, so you're encouraged to find your own. So that's kind of what I'm thinking people are kind of worried about. Where do I go from here, especially if you're already collecting data? So where do we go with getting a call accounting package? I'm here, so I'm going to have to plug one of our own, Stratatel Premium. If you guys, I'm not going to give you a lot of info on it. It's one of the many call accounting packages out there, and you could use it for your Avaya and your Nortel switches, so it's something to look at. It has a lot of other features that you could add on. It performs traffic studies, a lot of different things. There's other ones out there. If you do your research, you're basically looking for something that has the reports that you want. You're looking for something that has a good back-end database. If you guys did use TM, I know I'm bringing it up a lot because it's kind of similar to this. TM used an access database, and those, once you got to about 1 million records, which for some companies you could get to really quickly, but for some it might take you longer, those access databases weren't that good for storing a lot of records. So you'd have to take records out and store them in another file. So you want to make sure your billing system has a good back-end database, like a good flat file or a SQL database, something like that. Make sure it's good and reliable for you. You want it to be able to archive records for you so you could keep them back. If you are archiving records, I always recommend people to go put them on a network drive. Make sure that network drive is backed up through your IT staff, because I have had times where customers would come to me and say, I'm looking for this call, and they can't find the archived file of that call. So that's always something to look for. But this is one of the many applications you have. So keeping on with the TM, you could also technically use TM. They're not telling you that you could use TM for billing. They want you to go out and get new packages. But for some customers, you might not have the budget or the time to go out and find that new billing package. So technically, you could still use TM. It's technically not supported in a way, but since TM is just a program and the billing package is inside of it, you're not going to be able to use TM for anything else. So you won't be able to go in and say, I want to do a set change or anything like that. That's not going to work for you anymore. But if you log into your TM and you go into the billing system doesn't care where it gets the data from, whether it's a new switch or an old switch, the data is the same. So as long as you get the data coming in, usually through a buffer box. I have tested some of the DBA to work with the new switches, but I'm not going to go and say that it guarantees to work with all of them. That's why we're looking at these buffer boxes to hold the data. But once you get into your TM, and if you go to your buffer box to pull in the data and start to process and analyze it, the billing system doesn't care where that data came from. It doesn't care if it's a 7.0 switch or a 7.5 switch, the data is the same. So unless they go and change that data, in the near future, who knows, they might do it, but for now, it should be good to go. So for those people that are trying to move over to Avaya, I know you guys in the back were talking to me about that. This might be something for you to look at if you have any of these programs around on your current systems. You don't have to throw it away right away. You can still continue to use it. All right, so that's pretty much everything on the billing end of it.